Okay, well, thank you, Eric, for the introduction. I'm really pleased to be joining you virtually at the Allied Construction Industries Conference. Well, you're probably wondering, what am I wearing right now? We have a common bond in football. This is what I wear to the Canadian Football League home games in Vancouver, where I live. So we're both members of the Cat family. And I'd like to congratulate the Cincinnati Bengals for winning the silver medal at Super Bowl 56. Okay. I appreciate this is a safety conference, but I'd like to go beyond that and talk what you do in the construction industry. You run projects. Safety is important, but so is scope, production, schedule, budget. These elements are all critical, and the tensions can be positive or negative. To find balance amongst the various tensions requires the ability to adapt, and hence the title of today's topic, Adaptive Project Management. This is our agenda for the next hour. Why is managing projects getting more challenging? We'll look at what's different about PM today, and then how you can harness the power of your people. There should be also some time at the end if you have some questions. So let's set the stage by first asking, why is managing projects getting more challenging? A colleague in Australia was involved in a review of a $100 million capital project to understand what happened. He conducted what is called a current reality tree workshop and collected their comments. Why am I the last one to hear about it? The safety inspector would say, I've got a bad feeling about this. The supervisor would say, I'm frustrated, we have crews on idle. The frontline worker would be saying, I wish they would have asked me. And of course, we have the steering and owners, they're saying, why don't we learn and stop repeating these past mistakes? Well, there's no shortage of consultants offering PM solutions and recipes for success, and vendors selling their IT software solutions. So I find this quote from the Project Production Institute troubling and dismaying. It speaks about the illusion of being in control. Well, you thought you were here, but really, and you should be here, but really you're over there. Other things heard in the project reviews reflect this illusion. All seem to be on track until we near the end of the project, then it's clear it's not. Or I have no idea whether we're in trouble or not. So what's different about PM today? Let's examine how the real world has changed. The traditional model is the iron triangle, also called the triple constraint. While its origins are unclear, it has been used since at least the 1950s. Today, the iron triangle is considered insufficient as a model of project success because it omits crucial dimensions. Not surprisingly, consultants are creating their version, a diamond model, a pyramid model, others with 6 or multiple constraints. Well, for illustrative purposes today, I'm using the PPI model of 5 dimensions. Their first dimension is product design. This is encompassing regulations, EHS standards, sustainability guidelines, and so on. Under process design, we have applying operations science, such as theory of constraints, management science, logistics. Capacity, well, that's just your people, machines, tools, equipment, vehicles, facilities. Inventory, these are the supply chain issues and practices such as just in time, or maybe stockpile and incur storage charges. The last one, variability, this is where my attention has been. It's driven by all those frustrations heard during those project reviews. How can you find out before it's too late? And when we do, what do we adapt to respond? Project management means balancing relationships. From balancing relationships comes tension. The circle shows many, but not all, key relationships. We have the non-living and we have the human. We're all quite aware of the balancing act in the iron triangle. And below is a tension created when safety first is proclaimed, but profit first is practiced. If we ask workers to move the hexagon marker along the line, where would they position it? We can also ask them to move the hexagon marker anywhere in the triangle and show us where they felt the focus of the job was on. Safety professionals will recognize the balancing act in terms of Eric Hollnagel's ETTO, his efficiency, thoroughness, trade-off. Eric wrote about the trade-off driven by demands for productivity versus safety. These are decisions that people are making every day with this trade-off in the back of their minds. What's different about project management today? This is the big difference. We now realize there were three basic systems in the real world: order, complex, and chaos. The boundary between order and chaos looks a bit strange because it represents a physical cliff. So imagine a piece of paper folded over to form an edge. And you may have heard of the term the edge of chaos. Well, there's your edge of chaos right there. If you follow the edge, you plunge into chaos and you experience failure. Now, this red line denotes also a shift between systems, but it's not a physical one. It's more mental. In the order system, the work environment is certain, stable, predictable, consistent, repeatable. Traditional PM resides in the order system and why it works well. Ideally, this is an environment we want all of our construction projects to be in. Our attention is working on the parts. If the project is to construct a house, we break the job down into a sequence of parts: preparing the site, pouring the foundation, framing, plumbing, electrical, insulation, drywalling, finishing interior, flooring, installing fixtures, and finally, we do the landscaping. Variability is minimal since we're in the ordered system. As humans, we love order. We really like linear causal relationships. If we do this, then for sure we get that. What we've discovered over time is that we can create order by imposing rigid, fixed constraints. A formal hierarchy organization structure constrains who reports to here. Who? Here's Lucas, as CEO at the very top, and all the subordinates down below. If we manage product quality, leadership, alignment, competition, then we'll get profitability. In safety, we have regulations and policies and standards and rules and best practices, and they all create the conditions for orderly, if then linear causal effect relationships. And we can all do this because we work with fixable parts, which we call known knowns. But we also have risk. What's risk? Risk is a known unknown. We know about it, but we don't know how often or how big. So we use probability statistics and assign frequency and severity numbers to that risk. If the project is humming along in the ordered system and something goes wrong, you could fall over the cliff and plunge into chaos. It's a crisis if it's an accident. It's a machine unexpectedly breaking down, equipment suddenly falling apart, and human injury, or worse, a fatality. Being in chaos is temporal, which means you don't stay here for a long time because you respond quickly to escape. And if you don't immediately act, somebody else will do to control damage and recover quickly. It might be an event you've seen before, so you take action. You've got emergency preparation plans and you implement them. And you hope by doing that, you get back to the ordered system. But then again, it could be a situation you've never seen before. It could be an unknowable or an unimaginable. The third system is complex. In complex systems, relationships between agents are more important than the individuals. By agent, I mean humans, machines, ideas, events, anything that impact the system. With each new agent that you interact with, be it a person or object, the level of complexity in your life increases. Now, I'm not saying that's good or bad, it just is. What it does mean is that the complex system is growing relatively larger and larger compared to order and chaos. So let's talk a bit about moving around the three basic systems. You can enter complex either from order or from chaos. Most projects start in the order system with a plan, a blueprint. When uncontrollable forces hit, they dramatically change the stable environment. Uncertainty means decision-making isn't smooth and quick, resulting in delays. Ambiguity enables dilemmas to surface and hesitancy to creep in. A once peaceful atmosphere turns volatile, with shouting and swearing as conflicts appear. You want to look ahead, but the future is foggy and unpredictable. You don't know what's coming around the next curve. If you ignore all the signs and continue to work the plan as originally laid out, you might be under the illusion of being in control. Why does it feel this way? It's because you're now dealing with unknown unknowns. You thought you knew all there was to know, but you don't know what you don't know. And if you're smart enough to recognize your current reality, you will actually move to complex. As Elliot Jex once said, you cannot manage what you don't understand. So you do that. You move into the complex to gain new information, make sense of the knowledge gained, and then adapt the project constraints so that you can get back into the order system. Now, there's a couple of situations where you move from chaos into the complex. You accidentally fall into chaos. You're trying to get out of chaos using a fast recovery solution, but you find out it doesn't work. So you enter complex to understand what you don't know, and then search for something new that resolves a problem. You find it, then you take that back into the order system to implement. Here's another occasion. The project steering committee may deliberately plunge the company into chaos because they're tired of seeing the same PM mistakes repeated over and over. So nobody physically gets harmed when they plunge into chaos, but deeply held constraints and habits are shaken up and even destroyed. With no constraints, everything is random. There's no rhyme or reason. Essentially, minds are freed and open to think out of the box. Now you can move into complex to probe for new ideas and experiment with different solutions. We call this movement from order to deliberate chaos to complex disruptive innovation. Adaptive really means knowing which basic system you presently are in and the agility to move from one to another. The foremost research agency is the Santa Fe Institute. They identified 6 real-world phenomena that order system constraints don't address. First one is this one: no central control. There's nobody really in charge. So think of a network like the internet. Who's in charge of the internet? There's no Lucas that's in charge, that's for sure. Or think of the company informal network, where actually it's not Lucas, but it's Josh down here, who is a bigger player than Lucas. Why? Because as you can see, he's got a lot more relationships going on. Now, these relationships are not linear. You've heard of the term going viral. That's where a tipping point is reached. Going viral is taking on additional meaning with COVID-19. It doesn't spread linearly, but exponentially. Feedback in the system means multiple loops with process outputs feeding back as inputs, where in the order system, we can apply root cause analysis because if-then cause relationships exist. In the complex system, we don't know if-then relationships do exist or not. We only find out in hindsight afterwards. Being in the complex system may feel like chaos, except for one phenomenon. There's actually a sense of order in the complex system hidden as patterns. We see that in nature with birds flocking, fish swarming, tribal and gang behavior in humans. Emergence arises from the interactions between agents in the complex system. You pour hot water into a cup of ground coffee and aroma emerges. You know what else emerges? Safety, danger, success, failure, trust. You don't create safety. What you do is create the system conditions or change the constraints that enable safety to emerge. You also don't create trust. Trust emerges as people interact with each other over time. In the order system, reductionism applies. We can break things down into its parts. Think of Lego bricks. Put them together to make assemblies, then we can take them apart into their basic bricks. In the complex system, we cannot separate the parts and must deal with the whole. So think of mayonnaise. Once it's mixed together, you can't separate out the water, oil, vinegar, and salt. Water, air, heat are agents in a complex system. When they interact, natural disasters and extreme weather can emerge as severe outcomes. Last year in British Columbia, we had a few that smacked us really hard. First, it was a heat wave in the summer, which fueled wildfires through the fall. Then in November, a weather system, which I've never heard of before, called an atmospheric river, flowed across the southwest corner of the province, and over a period of 2 days, brought strong winds and near record amounts of rain, causing major flooding. All of the highways connecting Vancouver to the rest of the province were closed due to washouts and landslides. Inventory became a huge PM problem with major supply chain trucking routes broken. Susan Berman told me that your region experiences all 4 seasons as well. So you too have snow and ice storms, some local flooding, and the annual heat waves. So why am I raising this point? Well, here's the kicker for project management. Because complexity is growing, so will the number and size of extreme weather events increase. This is a consequence of global warming and climate change. Another consequence we're seeing is a huge rise in insurance premiums. Or for those deemed high risk, the inability to buy insurance coverage. And then we have these disasters that we as humans inadvertently impose. When conditions, constraints are too tight or too loose, they can result in unintended consequences. Too tight, and what we end up with is a Chinese property sector crisis emerges. Too loose, and we enable the pandemic virus to continue mutating in different strains. And then sometimes it's a combination of bad weather and poor management, the conditions that led to the Suez Canal blockage. COVID has exacerbated supply chain problems that were already becoming prevalent before 2020. And there's no sign that it's about to let up for 2022. For the construction industry, the supply chain disruptions have created another level of instability on top of the uncertainty inherent in any project. This inevitably will increase project risk and cost. When you're planning a project, do you think about the black elephants? A black elephant is a cross between a black swan, which Caleb wrote about in his book, and the proverbial elephant in the room. These are massive problems with severe negative consequences that are visible to everyone, but no one wants to deal with them until it's too late. The warning signs are there, but for whatever reason, they are ignored. Here's a really good example. Last year's Texas winter storm led to major power blackouts. This was a black elephant. The cold weather was a surprise, yes, but not being prepared wasn't. Politicians, the Public Utility Commission, the system operator ERCOT knew about the system weaknesses 10 years ago when they actually had a storm in 2011. Nothing was done. One could argue that the do nothing strategy was really a strategy based on luck. Texas had a winter storm this past month, but it wasn't extreme, so no major blackouts occurred. Now, tell me, is this good planning? More luck? Or is it a bit of both? Oh, and by the way, COVID-19 is a black elephant. In 2015, fresh off the Ebola crisis, Bill Gates warned all nations that we have invested very, very little in a system to stop an epidemic. In October 2019, at a global pandemic exercise, a call to action is outlined in 7 recommendations. Some countries have acted, while others have chosen to ignore the peril for political, economic reasons deemed higher priority. When living things are involved, we call it a complex adaptive system. That's because living things will avoid dying and adapt to survive. The human body is a complex adaptive system. Fighting COVID is your body practicing adaptive project management. All organizations are complex adaptive systems. Therefore, the construction industry as a whole is a complex adaptive system. Adaptive project management is responding to prevent falling into the chaotic system. Your people are best at adapting to the changing world. So let me explain why and how to harness that power. Over the past year, I have co-hosted a monthly online show called Meet the Author. It's a really neat opportunity to chat with authors of safety books and ask how they view things from their perspective. Carson Bush is one author, and I see that he'll be doing a session this afternoon. There were 2 themes that I consistently heard. Complexity is on the rise, and people are a solution waiting to be asked to help. To begin thinking about harnessing the power of people, let's discuss where you focus your time and how you personally use your energy. How much time do you spend discussing the past? 5%? 10%? 10% in a 40-hour week is 4 hours to read reports, maybe produce your own reports, and answer questions about project deviations. Like the travel road behind you, you can't do anything about it. It's in the past. Yeah, there might be some lessons worth learning, but only invest more time and energy to implement them going forward. Going forward means thinking about the future. So how much time do you spend fretting about meeting project milestones, targets, trying to figure out if these idealistic goals can be realistically met? Discussing them with the project sponsor, the committee, the owner. It's explaining variability based on what you know today, while at the same time giving customers and suppliers, investors, employees, regulators, a level of confidence that you know what you are doing. You're hoping what was planned in the past will happen in the future, but you really don't know if it actually will. And as I mentioned earlier, the road ahead is foggy. In the short term, it's peering through the windshield to see what's around the next curve, maybe a few bumps, or perhaps sensing something worse is emerging. In the long term, it could be spending a lot of time trying to predict what the new normal will be. Will it be people working on site, working remotely, or hybrid? That leaves the present, today, right now. If your attention span is primarily on the present, that's good, because you can only behave in the present. And we're blessed to be able to act. That's why we call the present a gift. One gift is a way to quickly understand what's happening in the present. Well, let's be honest. We don't have enough time to read everything that crosses our desk or computer screen. We don't have enough time to listen to everyone. We don't have enough time to separate out the signal from the noise, the wheat from the chaff, the facts from the fake news. I wouldn't be surprised if some of you are feeling really stressed at this very moment. Your brain might be in cognitive overload and it hurts. And I probably haven't helped bring it to your attention, so sorry about that. But rest assured, I'll show you a better way to leverage what the brain is really designed for. It's not designed for writing reports. What it's designed for is recognizing patterns. One more gift that would be really nice to have is another gauge alerting you of pending danger. And you can't have enough of these early warning detectors. As an engineer, I love things that tell me what's going on. Safety supply companies have done really well providing early warning indicators. Here are some mechanical, electrical overload devices for cranes and forklifts. When buying a new car, I like to sit in the driver's seat. I look at the dashboard gauges and dials. But I'm also looking to see if there's a built-in GPS system or if I can connect my iPhone. If I were driving from the airport to the hotel where the safety conference is being held, there it is, I'd use my Waze app on my iPhone to get directions. Waze is a human sensor network connecting drivers. I like Waze because it's crowdsourcing. Other Wazers on the road are alerting me of traffic problems in real time. Then the app takes that information, recalculates, and suggests the better route. What's really important to me in a new car are the safe driving features. On my must-have list are cameras all around the vehicle due to the limitations of the human brain. Inattentional blindness is the phenomenon of not seeing something right in front of your very eyes. You'll hear a distraught driver say, "I didn't see the bicycle rider until it was too late to stop." That's because over time, we've trained our brain to expertly scan for cars, and in doing so efficiently, it misses seeing other objects. There's no question a front camera automatically applying the brakes can be a real lifesaver. As I get older, I know I'm not as alert as I used to be. When changing lanes, I can still turn my head to see if there's a car in the blind spot. But my aging brain processes the information much slower. I'll turn, I'll look, and I'll look back and go like, what did I see? Did I actually see a car or not? So having sensors telling me when it's safe to change lanes is a huge benefit to me. And finally, we're coming around to accept that humans are not perfect machines. As an individual, you are not physically, mentally, emotionally able to be on alert 100% of the time. However, if we invite each person, each worker, to act as an anticipatory trigger, capable of detecting weak signals of pending danger, we collectively can maintain an overall heightened state of awareness. And that allows us to adapt to variability in the project as soon as it begins to emerge. This slide just displays methods and tools that are available for the adaptive project management approach. Let's start with the left, and we just call that anecdote circles. You're probably using this today in various ways, such as a crew debrief after a task is completed. It works well for fixing a bottleneck that negatively affected productivity, cost, schedule, quality of work. Crew members share their task experiences in the form of stories. It's simple and assumes Nobody better than the very people impacted know. It's a useful problem-solving method for the order system. You end up creating a to-do checklist that you can work on and hopefully eliminate some of those bottleneck concerns that were raised. When workers share stories of volatility, uncertainty, unpredictability, the problem is complex. Larger projects with more players interacting with each other typically reside in the complex system. The current reality tree method helps to visually map what the heck is going on. You saw this diagram earlier. Sadly, it's often conducted at a stage when the project manager discovers 50% of the budget has already been spent, but only 25% of the tasks are completed. Variability, not managed, has put the project behind the 8 ball. We quite likely are in a panic mode. Now, this method is more expensive. Consultant is brought in to facilitate a face-to-face workshop, listen to stories, map the bottlenecks, and develop action plans to dig ourselves into the big hole. The third method is the idea of inviting each person to be this anticipatory trigger, anywhere, anytime, to share a story via the internet. We call it distributed ethnography because everyone becomes an ethnographer, gathering stories and observations and how things are working or not working in the construction business. Since stories are captured digitally, a storyteller has the option of not having to write down in text, but to enter a voice recording or send a picture. And by the way, it's not all doom and gloom. Stories can also be those really great high-five experiences where work was done exceptionally well. So yes, we want to capture those success stories. We want to capture what we call the safety 2 stories, where things went right. Why capture stories as data? Humans are natural storytellers, and we're good at it. Think of your family and your children. When you put them to bed, what did you read to them? A children's story, a fairy tale, or perhaps you told them a story about yourself as a child growing up. Well, I'm pretty sure you didn't pull out a manual documenting family rituals, customs, rules, and best practices and kind of went through that page by page with them. No. Storytelling is how we pass knowledge down from generation to generation. Oh, by the way, your family is a complex adaptive system. Think about a recent episode you went through with a child, or maybe your spouse, that landed you in chaos. What did you do? Did you force a fast recovery back to order? You know, this is what dad or mom says, so do it. Or did you move in the complex to understand what you don't know to find a better solution, one that perhaps is mutually agreeable? Now, how you behave then could be a generational story that your child will tell your grandchild. Stories are a huge component of culture. Behaviors are above the waterline. We can see them. Stories are below the waterline, way down the iceberg model. Stories provide context in terms of deep feelings and emotions. We're all quite aware that lagging indicators dominate how we measure project management progress, while attitudes are leading indicators. I'm a Star Wars buff, and I smile every time I hear that line, "I got a bad feeling about this." This is a character being an anticipatory trigger. Early detection means capturing stories before they turn into, "I wish I had said something about that. I wish they would have asked me," or "if I had only known." Let's address the project management story, "if I had only known." Are you hearing attitudinal stories about nearing a tipping point and a potential plunge into chaos? If you're not hearing them, there could be a couple of reasons why. Firstly, it depends on the psychological safety in your organization. Psychological safety is a really hot topic these days, but it's not new. It was being explored 60 years ago in the 1960s. Timothy Clark, in his book, introduces 4 stages: inclusion, learner, contributor, and challenger safety. Each stage requires an increase in respect and permission. If you find that your people are not willing to share stories or speak up, you may be wallowing in stage 1. And guess what? This could be a black elephant for you. Everyone knows about it, but nobody wants to deal with it. It could be the fear of speaking up and getting punished. Or possibly that only a few selected are invited to share stories. There are people being excluded, not included. What about your clerical and janitor staff? Are they included? Are you learning from their contributions? As I said before, trust emerges as people interact with each other over time. The more people interacting without fear takes you to that next stage. The second reason is about process and technology. How easy is it for people to share their stories? What I'm showing you is SenseMaker, a software tool offered by Cognitive Edge. So please be aware, there are other ethnographic tools on the market to collect story online. And as a disclosure, I am not an employee of Cognitive Edge, now rebranded as a Canadian company, but I've used SenseMaker for over a decade as an independent facilitator. I designed an online collector for adaptive project management. There is a link for it. It's a fully functioning demo for you to go in and try it out. It's available 24/7 for anyone to enter a story anywhere. The learning curve for storytellers to use this tool is really short, 15 minutes max. No intense training required. There's a one-click on to instructions. It's just one short page. That's all you really need to know in order to use a tool. And there's no heavy sign-on process to slow down. Now, for some of you folks that are IT concerned, security, yeah, we can put all those protocols in place to make it very secure. And only your people, for example, in your organization would be able to enter your online collector. Those are all those things that you can work out. I try to keep abreast of other adaptive PM software tools vendors are offering. I find that they typically collect what is called big data and provide the who, what, when, and where. Ethnographers collect rich data because we capture the context to answer the why question. Recall in a previous slide, I talked about workers moving hexagon markers along the line and in the triangle. This is where they do that. They can just click on that hexagon and just move it all around. Same for here along this particular line. Also ask them to click on some choices here. And so if they really have a bad feeling about the story, they'd probably click on a pending danger. But they also may find that, oh, I just realized there's something that we could maybe make things better. So they would click an opportunity to improve. It's up to the storyteller to interpret, or what we call signify, how they feel about their experience. This is the mobile field app on a smart device. It's an Android or an iPhone. Distributed ethnography is a test and proven method that's in use around the world. Last year, I think there's over 1,000 engagements spread over 80 countries. It was used by the Colombia government to deal with the drug cartel problem. They had teenagers as distributed ethnographers collect text, voice recordings, and photos from family and local citizens. For many years, Singapore has engaged their citizens in their strategic planning. In 2017, if you recall, North Korea launched an ICBM missive. The South Korea government used distributed ethnography to conduct a situation assessment. Perspectives from different media sources and agencies were gathered to inform their decision-making. When COVID-19 broke out in February 2020, doctors in New York City hospitals immediately journaled in SenseMaker about their decisions treating a patient. Think what it was like back then. Uncertainty levels were sky high. Nobody really knew what we were dealing with. The story database has become the best knowledge repository available for the medical doctors in a constantly changing environment. During last year's US Pacific Coast fires, crews captured their observations and experience. The plan is to use the rich data to document lessons learned and improve existing practices. The demo collector feeds into the real-time dashboard. This is what you would see if you're a project manager, or if you've got a larger project, the project manager in office or the PMO. This demo, it's also fully functional. As new stories are entered, the dashboard is immediately updated to include the new information. So let's go back to the driving the car metaphor. Your eyes are looking forward, occasionally glancing down to check the dashboard gauges. What you see are very simple ones like bar charts, indicating how people are feeling about the project. As you can see in this demo, the feelings range from positive to negative with a lot of frustrated. We can also be alerted, like I said, of the pending dangers, and here they are. The triangle-shaped maps are heat maps. Each dot is a story, and the clusters formed show where the tensions are. These are the hidden patterns that emerge in a complex adaptive system. Like fish swarming, people are attracted to behave in a certain way. In this illustration, workers feel the pressure of getting a job done over schedule and cost. The color chart below is a 2D contour map. You can easily see how the hidden patterns show up as clusters. These are these darker areas. And if you look at that from a 3D perspective, these would represent hills. It's areas where people gather together. Remember what I said? I would show you a better way to leverage what the brain is designed for. The maps visually reveal the hidden patterns that the brain can recognize. What you do is make sense of the patterns formed to understand what's going on. And if you do want to read a story for context, it's really easy to do. And reports compiled from traditional surveys include bar charts. No big deal, but here's the big difference. Say you're presenting in front of the project steering committee. This chart shows 15 pending danger incidents. That's a bit of a flag. Pointed questions are going to be asked about the incidents. What's your response? Well, you could say, sorry, I don't have that information. Or maybe you bring up material that you worked on all night, guessing what they would ask. Or you could do this. You can actually, in the dashboard, click on the pending danger bar, and up pops the stories. And you just let them read the narratives live on screen. This process is called just intermediation. It's cutting out the in-betweens, the internal analysts and external consultants, so that they can't muck and massage the data. And when workers know that they have a direct pipeline from the front line to decision makers, they see what's in it for me, value their authentic voice being heard. And oh, by the way, this is how you can overcome the fear of speaking up, black elephant in your company. Let's just take a closer look at using a 2D contour map. The bar chart shows a wide spread. It raises the question, safety first, profit first? What's going on here? What we can do is generate a contour map to discover if there are any hidden patterns. The x-axis plots where the storyteller attention was on. Safety first, profit first, somewhere in between. The x-axis asks the storyteller, in order to be productive, did you bend the work to comply with the rules? Or did you bend the rules to get the work done? Or somewhere in between? Then we give it to the software to generate the maps to show how people responded. What patterns do you see? Well, it's pretty clear. There are many stories in the top right corner where the rules are being bent and the attention is on profit first. So the conversation you would have is probably an exploratory one. Does this validate what you already know is going on? Or do you find this surprising? And are you curious? What is attracting people to behave in this manner? One more value of these narrative maps. Do you actually have a safety vision? If yes, awesome. You have a compass heading, a north arrow if you like. So let me ask you the next question. What maps are you using to chart your course towards your safety vision? And how do you monitor your progress? I hope it's not with KPIs and set targets, things like that. Because as we said, the future is unpredictable. And if you get hit by one of these uncontrollable forces, that just may blow your whole plan. Well, if you don't have a map, how about a contour map that represents your culture in the present? The emergent set of everyday stories that people are willing to share. I've placed a green check mark in an area that would be coherent with a safety vision. No tension between profit and safety, or maybe it was balanced, and that's what the storytellers said. There's no need to bend rules or bend work. That's what the storytellers said. The green check mark is where you read the desirable stories. You want lots of stories here. The red crosses show where there are stories about undesirable behaviors. And these arrows chart your course. You want to go from there to there. So the intervention question that we can ask is, what system constraints might we adapt so we can get fewer stories like these in the red and more stories like these in the green? Don't forget, this is a complex adaptive system. This isn't about controlling people and forcing them to change their behavior. If that's your prevailing culture today, your maps will display a lot of unfavorable red X stories. And maybe why you may be only at the first stage of psychological safety. It's about changing work conditions that influence the relationships between humans and humans, humans and objects. A simple intervention could be, oh, let's stop doing weekly reports and try daily journaling using the SenseMaker collector to get more timely data and refresh the maps. Try that for a month or two and monitor what happens. Another experiment could be changing the relationship between individual bonus pay and collective performance output. Well, here's an interesting test. A client enabled a shift to more green stories about faster decision-making by introducing a rule that states when rules can be broken. As experiences are entered into an intervention, it's conceivable new patterns will emerge. And you'll see clusters taking shape, hopefully, around that green check mark. You don't measure progress, we monitor progress. In 2019, KPMG released a survey of construction companies. Using a Future Ready Index, the companies were tiered into innovative leaders, followers, and behind the curve. My talk today highlights the need to experiment with new tech on pilot projects. One experiment is making a small investment to build a human sensor network to detect pending dangers, or on the positive side, serendipitous opportunities that arise. Your people have a voice that wants to be heard. They're the best at adapting to the changing work pattern. I suggest you give them the tools to demonstrate the value and the power that they have. I will stop sharing and over to Eric.
Awesome. Is there any questions, comments for Gary? Yes, Drew.
Yeah, Gary, you talked about some metrics and with the digital transition now going on and globally, but especially in our industry with being 20 years behind the curve and starting to implement digital platforms and trying to get as much metrics, especially in the project management world. What in your consulting experience have you seen organizations implement from a measurable that has yielded a great return? And I think we're all aware of what measures gets done, but have you seen anything historically that greatly benefits and pushes the ball forward as a measurable or building out a digital platform? Just curious on your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I go back to the days when I was in Ernst & Young Consulting, and we were implementing a lot of IT at the time. We use that term enterprise resource planning, ERP. And that was essentially like SAP and the Oracles. These products were actually manufacturing products and very oriented towards operations, project management. And if you recall back in the 80s, that was the days of business process reengineering. We made some huge, I think, advances in putting in software, fixing processes. But we also did some oops. One of the big oops is that we treated people really to be like machines. So we introduced technology, digital technology, that really said, we're going to introduce a technology and we want people to work with it. I think we got that backwards. Really, we should be looking at technology that augment people. So what we've tried to do is say, all the stuff that you've got, which is great for collecting big data, good stuff. What I'm showing you now doesn't replace that. It supplements that. It's getting you the rich data, because unfortunately, big data can't answer the why question. And this is why this whole field of ethnography, from anthropology and observing what people actually do, is important. Some of you may have heard that term about work imagined and work as done. What ethnography really focuses on is work as done. Hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Gary, real quick, you mentioned anthropology. Can you kind of expand just briefly on how you've started to incorporate anthropology in the study of work as done?
Yeah, I think what we want to do is look at what the different sciences can offer. And when I say sciences, there are what we call the hard sciences, natural science like physics, chemistry, math, all those sort of things. It's great. But also the social sciences. Anthropology is one of those social sciences. For that matter, safety is a social science. So what do we learn from anthropology? Anthropology is about going in and watching a tribe. And I'll use the word tribe. I mean, I know it's probably been played around with, but you go in and you observe what people are doing in a community, whatever. It's about you absorbing them, using their language, their terms, their jargon to really understand how things work for them. Now, good example of we found in anthropology is that Western European thinking, and if you like North American, both US and Canada, we love to talk. And when we sit down, we've got a problem, we go and we get together in a conference and we talk and we talk and we talk and we talk. In the indigenous communities, if you observe them, they do, and then they have a conversation for what they did. So they're very much more action-oriented, and they don't mind just getting out and doing stuff and then say, what did we learn from that? So anthropology is teaching us that the whole idea of doing trial and error experiments, essentially stuff in the complex system, is really, really important, as opposed to like, let's sit down, plan this thing out, let's build a business case around it, let's figure out, forecast, do this, make assumptions, and then find you never get past the business case stage. They just go and do small experiments, very small, try it. Let's see if this will work. Oh, this worked, great. Let's do more of that. It didn't work, let's do less of that. This is the sort of things that anthropology are teaching us, because that's how things get done by other people.
Thanks, Gary. Something you said there, you said assumptions. I believe with my whole heart that if we spent more time learning and talking about assumptions in the world of safety, we would learn a lot more than trying to have all the answers.
Yeah.
Any other questions, comments? Gary, we want to thank you for your time. I'm going to head and let these lovely people go. If you have anything for me, I can kind of hang out for just a minute and answer any questions, comments that you may have. Okay.
Okay, I can make my slides available. I don't know how visible, how clear they were on your screen.
No, they were great. They were great.
Okay, good, fine, right.
Yeah, please make them available. You can email them to me and Susan. And then I did record this, so I'm going to stop recording now.